what makes us different is that all our teachers in our school are CELPIP certified with at least 15 years of background. We are very fast-paced. This is the adjective that many of our students use when they want to talk about our classes. The fees are pretty much reasonable, and we offer you lots of practices and strategies in the shortest time possible. Um, about the courses that we offer at ILIA English Academy, we have general English classes, power English classes. We have IELTS preparation, and we do like bi-weekly IELTS mock tests. We have CELPIP preparation classes, CELPIP mock tests, KL, CAEL preparation, which is another test actually presented by the Prometric. Job interview classes, free discussion, English grammar clinic, essay writing for college schools and school students, high school students, French and Spanish. One last thing I would like to mention here, as the participants in this webinar, you will enjoy some benefits. The first one is exclusive access to complimentary study materials generously provided by Prometric, and also a fantastic opportunity to attend one free CELPIP class at ILIA English Academy. One free CELPIP class at ILIA English Academy. You will receive a code from Prometric, and you will send it to us. We will receive it. We'll contact you, and we'll tell you about the date of that. Free class, and you can attend the class and ask all your questions about CELPIP. I'm going to share some of our social media links, if I may, in the chat box with you. So this is we have a page on Telegram, if you have an account there. This is the thing. So, okay, this is our Telegram link. And the other one, this is our Instagram here. And also, yeah, if you'd also like to Google us here, you can find them here. Yeah. And if you would like to have access to the recorded videos of the previous webinars, you can go to our YouTube and find the videos there. Okay. Yeah, I think I'm done, Brandy. Thank you. Yep.
All right. So
you're all ears.
Perfect. So we have about 90 people on board, so that's great. So you noticed your microphones are muted. So what I'm going to do is, if you've got any questions about instruction and the test itself, if you put those in the chat box, I can attend to them as I'm presenting. I think Patrick as well is answering questions coming into that Q&A. So between the two of us, and Sarush can also answer some of those too if he wishes, we've got you covered. We will find time at some point to get to all of your questions. Our sound seems to be working, so we're just going to keep right on going. Today's all about speaking, so you might not need to worry too much about note-taking, but if you do want to take any screenshots of the slides I'm going to show you, you're more than welcome to do that. Some people like to have records of certain things, I guess, to help them study later on. But very soon, in the next 24 hours, we'll say, we are going to email you with some very helpful links. So you're going to receive a link that will allow you to access a study pack of materials geared towards the speaking part of the CELPIP test. So we're going to be covering 8 different speaking tests today in session. I'm going to be showing you real CELPIP test questions from past CELPIP tests. And as a group, we're going to be looking at, or listening to, I guess, real test takers' answers to these particular questions. We're going to try to figure out what these test takers have done very well and then where they still need to improve. So within this study pack, you are going to be able to access the sample responses that we'll be discussing today. So I think that's a pretty good copy as well. We also, as mentioned, are going to give you a promotional code so that you can redeem one free study product from the CELPIP online bookstore. And this one is geared towards speaking and listening. It's called Accelerate. All right. And also we have a link that will allow you to access a speaking webinar that's already being recorded, just in case you missed this one or in case you want to brush up and refresh your memory on what we're talking about. So allow me to quickly introduce myself, please. I do recognize some of your names actually, as I'm an online instructor with the CELPIP test. My name's Brandy. I deliver a lot of free webinars, just like this one, on our regular Zoom channels. We do at least 7 or 8 webinars there a month, and they're all designed to help all of you and support you in your language development so that you can do really well on your CELPIP test whenever you choose to book those tests. So again, I may have met you before in some of my other webinars. I present quite often on YouTube and sometimes even on Instagram. So our paths may have crossed somewhere. If you're brand new to CELPIP, or maybe this is the first time that we are meeting here, a very special welcome to all of you. So I've been teaching for the CELPIP test specifically for about 4 years, but I've been teaching in general coming up on 24 years. November will be my 24-year anniversary. So I love what I do, and I'm hoping that the strategies we talk about today for speaking are going to prepare you very well for your test. Okay, so for the next, and this is a long session, we've got about 2 hours worth of material to cover. So I'm going to quickly introduce what the speaking test looks like on the CELPIP when you sit down at your computer to start this test. So we'll go over that and we'll talk about how your test is scored. It's really important for each of you to know which skills you're going to want to demonstrate so that the raters, these are the humans, the professionally trained, experienced raters, are going to give you a score based on what they hear you do on your test. So we'll make sure you know what to do. And then, as I say, we're going to dive right in. We have 8 different tasks, or different questions, if you will, for the speaking test on CELPIP. And as I said, we're going to look at a real test question from each of them. Now, these questions are from past CELPIP tests. So you're never going to see these exact questions on a future test. I thought I'd better let you know that, but we will certainly use these questions as authentic test practice today. You will have an opportunity to do a couple of practices out loud if you so choose to participate. Your microphones are muted, remember, so nobody will hear what you have to say. But if you have your cell phone somewhere nearby right now, it would be very handy to record your practice speaking into the cell phone. And then you can listen back later on and use the same assessment we're talking about today. You can start to get a sense about where your skills already lie. And at the end, if we've got time, I'll take a few extra minutes just to go over quickly the free study products that we have to offer you. And we do have an online bookstore, so I'll quickly introduce that to you as well. All right, so here's your speaking test on one computer screen. This is the very last part of CELPIP. So when you take your CELPIP exam, if you are applying for permanent residency status, you will take the CELPIP general test, which will attest your listening, reading, writing, and then speaking. So the speaking's the very last part. It takes about 20 minutes to work through all 8 of these speaking questions on the test. Now you'll notice at the very top here, we've got something quite unusual. It's called a practice task, a task 0. And this does not count towards your score. It's literally a way for you to test out your computer equipment before the actual speaking test begins in task 1. So you'll be seated at your own little computer workstation in the testing room. When you take CELPIP, you'll be wearing a headset, and attached to that headset is a microphone. And you'll actually be speaking out loud and recording your voice into that microphone. And it's the recordings that you make that are listened to later on by the human raters who give you a score on your speaking test. So you just want to make sure that the microphone is working properly. That's the only reason this practice task is here. So once you've tested that out and it's working just fine, you would jump right into task 1 and work through these tasks in the exact same order as they're presented here. Now, if you look at the right-hand columns, you'll notice some times. In the preparation time column, you'll see that most questions give you about 30 seconds to prepare. So this means you're reading the question through and you're starting to think about your main ideas. There are 2 tasks, though, about halfway through in tasks 5 and 6 that will give you even more time to prepare. You get a full minute there, okay? Now, the speaking time, if you look even further to the right, most of the time you're speaking for 1 full minute. But once again, we have 2 different tasks that require a little bit extra. So task 1 and then task 7 towards the end. will ask you to speak for 90 seconds. And you're always going to know how much time you have because this is what your computer screen looks like. So you're currently looking at the practice task, but all 8 speaking tasks are formatted the same way. You're always going to have your question right here. You can see in the top right corner, there is the prep and recording time there anyway. But as soon as you begin a new computer screen and you're starting a task, the preparation time clock is going to be right in the middle of the computer screen, and it will count backwards. So in this case, you started with 30 seconds, and then the clock would just keep counting back until it hits 0. So again, this is the time you're going to take to read the question and start thinking about your main points. Some people actually do like to write down their main ideas on a piece of paper. You will be given paper and pen in the testing room. But either way, come up with 2 or 3 main points. That's how to use the prep time effectively. And then you'll know that you'll be speaking for, in this case, 60 seconds. You can see it right here on the screen. Now there is a next button. So some people just trust that their microphone's working no problem and they don't want to do the practice task. They want to just jump right into task 1. And if that's the case, kindly click next and you'll move right on to task 1. But be advised, there's no back button. So the moment you move forward, that is the only direction you can continue to go. You can never return. You also don't get to carry with you any extra time anyway. So each screen will start with its own predetermined number of seconds for prep as well as for speaking. So again, just use the next, in this case, if you wanted to skip the practice task, up to you. Now, when you are speaking, this is what you want to see in the middle of your computer screen. You'll notice that the word on the screen says recording, and that is how you know that the microphone is live. So anything you say into that mic is going to be recorded and included in your answer for that particular test question. You'll know that you're speaking at the right volume if that little gray bar over top of the microphone icon is bouncing gently up and down about the middle of the screen. So that's a comfortable volume right there. Use the same volume you would in a typical conversation. Okay, there's no need to shout into the mic, but the worst case scenario is you do not want to whisper or talk so quietly. Imagine that. If you talk that quietly, the mic would probably not pick up your voice clearly enough to be understood. So just make sure, again, it's working. This is the visual that you see on screen. The last thing I should point out is on the real test, that little blue bar that you see beneath the word that says recording. The blue bar will move all the way to the right-hand side of the screen. So it is the timer, actually. And because this is a 60-second question, it would take 60 seconds then for that timer to reach the end. So it's nice to have your notes in front of you and you're speaking into the mic, but you're keeping an eye on this timer. So when there's hardly any white space left, that's when you wrap up your answer and offer the conclusion, and then you're finished. So you'll do that for each of those 8 tasks. Okay, now the raters, when they listen to your responses, you are going to have at least 3 different raters that are anonymously assigned to listen into the recordings you're making for those 8 tasks. We would never base your score on one person's opinion. There's always multiple raters assigned to assess. So they're listening to your recordings and they're trying to pick out these particular skill sets. So on the left-hand side, you'll notice the 4 categories of skills, and we call them dimensions. So your content details will be addressed. So the raters need to hear that you're offering an adequate number of main points. So for a 60-second question, most of us would have 2 or 3 main ideas anyway. And then for each main idea you present, to earn a higher score, you're going to want to offer up specific examples and details. So think of it this way. The more interesting your answer is, the more specific and focused those details are that you're including, the better the quality of your answer, and therefore the higher the score under content. Okay, now coherence just speaks to how well you're organizing yourself. So there should be a clear introduction, middle with the details, and then a conclusion at the end. Your vocab is also important. So we want you to showcase your best vocabulary. We just encourage you to make sure you're choosing words that make sense, that are natural and suitable for the context or the meaning that you're trying to convey. That's all. And the better variety you can demonstrate, the higher the score. So we don't want to just repeat the same words over and over. Last but not least, being very specific and precise with your word choice is certainly going to help you out. So I'll take the very general term or noun person. I'll use that as an example right now. If I said to you, there's a person right over there, In your mind, you probably can't even begin to imagine who it is I'm looking at, because a person could be a million different things. Is that person that I'm looking at, is that my young nephew? Is that my next door neighbor? Is it my high school biology teacher, right? So who is it? Who is it that we're looking at as an example? So be precise with your word choice. If the listener can fully understand, but imagine in their mind what it is you're talking about, you've done your job quite well. Listenability, that third little dimension down, this is all about your public speaking, your speech delivery. So think about mastering the basics of being understood by your listener. So we talked about talking loudly enough to be heard. I think we should also talk at a comfortable speed. So we don't want to talk so quickly that people can't keep up, but we also don't want to talk too slowly. So find a good middle ground, a good natural rhythm for yourself as well as for your listener. But pronunciation is key. All right. Having an accent is wonderful. All right. We can still understand people who speak in any one accent, provided that they are stressing the words in the right places. This is how pronunciation becomes clear. So once you have mastered those foundational skills, you'll then want to fine tune, practice at home, speaking from beginning to end so that you are not pausing for too long. And we hope that you're not interjecting or interrupting yourself either. So I think it's natural to say and now and then. But if you are interjecting like that in the middle of every sentence, it's going to just interrupt the flow of the piece. And your listener will probably get frustrated. So we try our best to move that speech forward with very few interruptions to the best of our ability. And the last part of this dimension is also about your sentence structure. So we don't want to just talk in short, simple sentences. The more complex, the longer your sentences are, and the variety or the different ways that you're connecting your ideas together. This is going to boost your score under listenability, and your grammar as well will be considered. The raters do not have a transcript of your answer, but they can tell just by listening. You're focusing on things like verb tenses and subject-verb agreement and such. So all of the same writing skills that you're hopefully practicing, you're going to apply those same grammar rules to your speech as well as your talking. All right, and last but not least, under task fulfillment, this speaks really to how completely you've answered the question. So sometimes you might get a CELPIP test question that almost asks you to address two parts or two separate little subtopics. So please just make sure that you are addressing all parts of the question in an equal or balanced way. That's the best way to maximize your score here. And we also need to ensure that our details are relevant. So they're on topic and they actually answer the question on the test. Your tone is important too. So tone will be the emotion that you are conveying through your tone of voice, yes, but also through your word choice. So in task 1, when you're giving advice to somebody, when we give advice, we're supposed to encourage and support that person. So you'd likely say a few words of encouragement right at the beginning of your response to put your listener's mind at ease before you launch into the actual advice. So adding all these little touches are going to help elevate your score, and the length as well. That's part of your score. You don't have to be perfectly on the 1 minute mark, but you want to get close to that. So if you've given a full answer at 52 seconds and you've done very well in all 4 of these categories, being a couple seconds short on the clock, it's not going to harm your score at all. All right, so all 4 of these categories are going to be looked at together as a package. And this is the important part about understanding the scoring process. So you could do exceptionally well in one of these areas. So again, maybe English is your first language. People come from all over the world, Ireland, Australia, England, etc. And if they're immigrating to Canada, they still need to take a language proficiency test to be accepted for their permanent residency status. So if English is your first language, arguably your speech delivery is probably already quite strong since you've been speaking English all your life. But if you're not offering any specific important details, if your vocab is a little bit simplistic or repetitive, if you are forgetting to answer part of the question and maybe your answer is 20 seconds too short, by demonstrating so many major weaknesses in every other area of the score chart, it's not going to earn you the highest score that you were probably hoping for. So when you're practicing at home, you will receive the speaking performance standard chart in the study pack that we're giving to you. This is why I say practice your speaking by recording your voice into your cell phone. Type out your own transcript. So word for word, what you hear yourself say, you're going to type that out. And then you can go through this checklist of skills first by yourself, find what you're already doing very well, and then identify your weaknesses, and then get a second opinion. If you have a tutor, or maybe you're taking a prep class, or you're taking one of my free webinars and you've got some questions and so on and so on, find somebody else to give a second opinion. And by discovering your weak points, that's where you want to set aside time to study. You know, there's no sense studying things that you're already doing very well in. You want to devote that study time to really enhance or improve the weak areas. So the focus of this webinar today is going to be looking at those 4 categories and finding evidence of those skills in all of the responses that we're going to be listening to today. Okay, so your CELPIP test, by the way, is always scored out of levels. There are 12 of them for each language component. So for your speaking test, if you're earning a level 12, it means that you have an advanced proficiency in communication in the English language. For practice purposes today, what we're doing, and we've got 8 different sample responses to show you today. I've selected them specifically so that we've got some examples down at the level 5. This would be considered more of a beginner level. And then we've got levels 8 and 9, which would be your intermediate levels. And then you've got level 12 at the top, which is considered advanced. So by the time we're finished today, I'm really hoping we can each of us walk away understanding the difference. So when you hear a response moving forward, or when you produce your own practice responses, I'm hoping at the very least, you can start to recognize what makes a beginner, intermediate, and advanced level response according to what the raters are looking for. All right, so keep that in mind as we go through today's session. So we're starting at the very beginning. So task 1, you're always being asked to give advice. And this question gives you 30 seconds to read through the question and think of it. And you'll have 90 seconds to speak. So can you each take about 10 seconds right now, just on your own, read through that question at the top, and then I'm going to ask you some questions about it, and we'll use our chat box to participate. Okay. So again, you've only got 30 seconds, so you need to learn how to skim read these questions pretty quickly and pull out the keywords. And I just placed 3 questions at the bottom of the screen. So I'm hoping that we can use our chat box here in Zoom to throw down our ideas, and we'll make this one giant study group online. Okay, so I'm curious, first of all, who it is we're speaking to in this question. If you can find that person's name, that would be wonderful if you could share it with us. But I would also like to know who that person is to you. In other words, is it a coworker? Is it a neighbor? Is it a family member? Is it a friend? So identifying these details is the starting point of any role-playing situation like task 1. So looking in my chat box already, looks like sort of as a group, some of us have identified the name of the man, which is Mark, and that's important. So when you start this, you're going to say, "Hi, Mark," all right, since it's given to you. But importantly as well, you've noticed it's your friend. And the reason this is important is because remember how your tone is part of your score? So when you're speaking to a friend, you know them well enough that it's probably normal or acceptable anyway to use more casual or even slang and idiomatic language. So when you're role playing, feel free to throw in those casual expressions that you may know as you're giving advice. If this was your boss, on the other hand, that you didn't know well, it probably wouldn't be appropriate to be so casual. So you always have to figure out who it is you're speaking to, and then you're going to choose your language or adjust your tone accordingly for the listener. So it's our friend. So that's at least helpful to know. Okay, what about the second question here? So what is the background? So this is the rest of that first sentence. What is it that Mark wants to do? So we have to understand this before we can even think of pieces of advice. What is it Mark wants to do? It's an age-old dilemma. Poor old Mark. He's got a little bit of a problem in a sense, doesn't he? Yeah, and by the way, when you're sharing ideas in the chat box, if you make them visible to everyone, that means everybody on the call can see what you have to say. If you wanted to share just with myself, Sarush, and Patrick, you can make your comments visible to the co-hosts and panelists. Okay, So looking here, it looks like, yeah, everyone summarized the situation perfectly. So Mark wants to get to know this woman that he works with, right? So obviously he doesn't know her very well at all, but he wants to get to know her. It sounds like he's probably romantically inclined. He maybe wants to have a date, but he just doesn't know how to go about approaching her. And the problem is that he's very shy. So when we're going to be giving him advice, question gives you two things to consider. We need to consider that Mark's really shy. So it's not very logical that he's just going to walk right up to this woman's desk and introduce himself and ask her out. A shy person probably wouldn't be comfortable doing that. So remember, your content details need to be specific and interesting, but they also need to be suitable and logical and make sense. So we've got two parts of this question to cover. And before I play for you the answer, I'm hoping that all of us online can do a little bit of brainstorming. So can we just address the how? So I'm not worried right now about the topics of conversation. We can get into that in a minute. That's the what. That's the second part of this question. But right now, this first part that's been underlined for you on the screen is that we need to give advice to Mark about how he's even going to have the opportunity to speak to this woman. And I think the easiest starting point is, can we have the name of the woman, please? It's not in the question, so you're going to make it up. So remember, on CELPIP, the more specific your details, the better your score. And inventing a name for the woman he's talking to is one of the easiest ways to throw in a very precise detail. So we've got some women's names coming in here, so that's great. I see names like Jennifer, Stella, Sharon, Winter, sure. Honestly, it does not matter what name you're going to use, but I would advise you to try your best to remember to throw one in. Okay, it's just, again, it's an easy way to racket up those details that are going to help you earn a higher score overall. So let's just, for argument's sake, I see Cyril has introduced the word Lucy. That came in privately, actually, just to me, but let's go with Lucy just for argument's sake. So we're going to introduce the situation as we start to talk. It's okay to give about a sentence or so to summarize. You might say, hey, Mark, you know, maybe today's the day that you're finally going to go talk to Lucy in the office. I know you've been wanting to talk to her for ages now. So just say something casual to your friend to sort of introduce the situation and get the ball rolling. One sentence would do it, just like I demonstrated. And then you're going to suggest how. So how on earth are we going to get Mark close enough to Lucy to have a conversation in the office? What would be logical for a very shy person? What would make Mark feel comfortable and help him to achieve his goal of talking to this woman? What do you think? Oh, Vishwa, can you make that public for everyone? Because I think it's a great idea, but it's a shame you've only shared it with me. I would love to share that with the whole group, but I'm going to wait for you to make that comment public. Okay, Lewis has one. Well, how are we going to make her a friend? That's the thing, right? Okay, Cyril, again, with the private. I'm going to call out just on the public comments. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense to everybody else watching. Okay, Jerry, you're giving us a topic of conversation, and we're not there yet. Okay, so Simon, how are we going to make Lucy our friend? That's what we have to figure out. Okay, Tindy, you've given us the first workable idea that I've seen publicly come in for everyone. So something about the lunchroom. Yeah, that makes sense. Think about an office setting. Most offices have a lunchroom or a break room. So could we say to Mark, hey, Mark, why don't you sit at the same table as Lucy today at lunch? And then you can strike up conversation with her. So that's your first piece of advice on how Mark is even going to have that chance to talk to Lucy. Okay, and then you might say, I would probably aim for 2 pieces of advice at least for each side. I might then say to Mark, if you don't have the opportunity to take lunch at the same time as Lucy today, well, then maybe you can catch her in the kitchen when she's going to pour herself her second cup of coffee. You know, walk into the kitchen. You can also grab a cup, and then you can strike up conversation with her there. Okay, so it's 2 very different reasons on how we're even going to approach Lucy in the first place in a comfortable manner for both Lucy and for Mark as well, given that he's shy. Okay, so that's the how. You might have some other ideas about how on earth Mark is going to, you know, get up the nerve and get close, but let's switch gears now and go to the second part. This part's easier. The what. What are some common topics of conversation between virtual strangers? So Mark wants to make a good impression. He doesn't want to say anything to insult Lucy or to make her feel uncomfortable. This is super important. He's a man approaching a woman. So what would be appropriate here for him to talk about once he has her attention, whether that's at the lunchroom, whether that's at the coffee machine or what have you. Okay. Simon's got a great idea. And Ariana, it's the same thing as what you're talking about. Maybe you can compliment her on a work project that she's working on, or ask her questions about a work project that she's doing. So here's what we're going to do now as a group, right? So that's her main idea. Ask her about the work project she's working on. That's a fantastic and logical, very specific main idea, but you're not finished with it yet. The responses that will score better are going to back those up with precise details. So you yourselves right now, and this is what I'm asking you to do for me, you're going to create the type of project that Lucy's working on. Okay, make up these details. You can base it on your own life experience. If one of you is currently working on a project at work, you can bring that into the conversation and just pretend it's Lucy's project. So I think when you're using your own life experiences to guide your ideas, you'll think of them a lot faster. You just have to adapt your ideas for the question. Okay, so let's build on that. So if we're asking Lucy about a work project, can somebody here suggest to us a very specific work project? What would that look like to you? Be as precise and detailed and interesting as you possibly can. Okay, so Lewis has one, and it's an Excel spreadsheet project. Good start. Let's keep going. What is the Excel spreadsheet project all about? Is it meant to be measuring the number of new nonprofit organizations that we're trying to bring into the company? That's specific. Is the Excel spreadsheet trying to map out the locations of the new venues that we're opening company-wide? That's specific. See what I mean? I'm pushing you. It's not just stopping at, oh, let's talk about this Excel spreadsheet. Well, what's that spreadsheet about? Okay, so again, the more detail you're able to provide, the better your score is going to be under the content area anyways. Okay, and again, that's just one example, and there are more. So talking about a work project, asking her about her hobbies, maybe asking her about if she has plans for the weekend, and so on. So you've got 90 seconds to fill. You'd be balancing your talk time between the how and the what, and you want to be as precise and interesting as possible. So with all that in mind, what I'm going to do next is play for you our first sample response of the day. So this is a woman speaking. This was her question on her CELPIP test in the past sometime. So we're going to follow her transcript as we listen. So on the real test, the raters do not have a transcript, but we're going to look at the words on screen as we're listening, because I'm then going to ask all of you many detailed questions about that rater's checklist. So as you're listening, please keep your ear open for this woman's pronunciation. If you think she's speaking clearly, wonderful, let us know. If you notice some weaknesses, maybe she's pausing for a long time, you can let us know. Okay, so think about the voice, but also look at the words on screen. We're trying to identify what her pieces of advice are. We need to see if she has those interesting details to support them. We're also trying to find evidence of interesting vocab choices and sentence structure. So I'll guide the discussion after we've listened, but I'm hoping that you can keep an open mind about all four of those skills, and we'll go from there. Okay, here's the first response now.
Hey, Mark, I heard you're interested in Sherry. Wow, that's really good to know. She's a really awesome person. So you're really shy about it, then why don't you just ask for a coffee, during lunch break or something like that? Maybe you can just initiate, maybe hey, do you wanna talk about project or something like that? That will be actually kind of smooth way. She won't be really creeped out by it. Sometimes the female coworkers, when male coworkers ask them out, you feel kind of they feel a little bit creeped out, especially they just approach kind of a little bit wrong way or something like that. But if you ask for a coffee, to talk about project you guys working together, that would be actually really nice, to talk about. She will feel maybe friendly about you. And maybe once you succeed in asking out for a coffee, maybe you can start asking for lunch or something like that later on. Maybe ask for a drink, after work, but very casually. That'll be the key. So good luck with it, Mark, and I hope she likes it.
Okay. All right, so I'm going to start by targeting the listenability area. So I'm going to really guide us precisely at the beginning of this webinar, and then I'll loosen up my questions as we get going and pass the reins over to you a bit more independently. But for this first response, the very first question I have for you, I think is a very easy one to answer. It's a yes or no question. Did you find this woman's pronunciation clear? Would you say yes or would you say no? Feel free to share your thoughts with us in the chat box. We'll take like a poll. So was the pronunciation clear? We're not interested in the details right now. We're just focusing on pronunciation. I'd say 100% clear. Even without this transcript, we would have had no trouble understanding what she was saying. So that is step one. We have to understand the words, and yes, we do. So she's on a good start here. Did you notice any long pauses? Were there any glaring silences where she just stopped talking and was thinking? Would you say yes or no? Long pauses. Did you notice any? Nope, there weren't any. I don't know what the rest of you were hearing, but nope. There was a very natural rhythm to this response, and there were no long pauses. Now, keep in mind, my goodness, we have to pause for a split second between sentences. Yes, that's all considered natural. But when I say, were there any long pauses, did she ever stop speaking for 5 or 6 seconds and just sit there thinking? And when we stop for such a long and unnatural amount of time, it's going to interrupt things. Luckily for her, she had a very bouncy, energetic intonation, and the rhythm of her answer was quite strong. So she just kept moving that speech forward, and it sounded wonderful. So far, we only have strengths of that listenability. There was definitely, though, one major weakness that maybe you noticed as she was talking. What would you recommend this woman work on for her future speech presentations that she gives? Pronunciation's great, rhythm's fine. We're not pausing or interrupting ourselves to that degree, but what's the problem here? Yeah, and if you look in the chat box now, you'll notice that we're all noticing the number of interjections. So we include interjections in the transcript so you can see exactly where they happen. So there's quite a few of these They happen a lot more frequently in the beginning. Keep in mind, it's the beginning of the speaking test, and she's probably a bit nervous. I do notice that the interjections happen less frequently down here, but they are a little bit distracting. Okay, once in a while is okay, but when we're interjecting this much, I think it is a bit problematic. It does tend to interrupt the flow. There's another, it's sort of like an interjection. She uses this expression very frequently. Whoops, right here. You know, like, she says it all the way through. You know, like, kind of like, something like that. You know, like, and so on. You get the point. I sound like a broken record now. So that would be more or less the same problem as interjecting, whether we're saying or you know, like, it interrupts the flow of the piece. So it's a problem. So if we could sit down with this woman and say to her, your speech is actually really, really strong. However, the one element that we'd like for you to tighten up is to reduce or to eliminate altogether all of those filler words that don't give any detail about the response. And if she takes away all those interjections, she'll actually have more time to build content details in her answer. So that was definitely one of the weaknesses the raters noticed. There is another slight weakness, and you probably didn't notice this unless you knew what to look for. I'm talking about sentence structure. So I'm going to go right back up here with my laser pointer, and I'm going to read out loud the first 4 sentences that she spoke to us aloud. And I'd like you to really focus on the sentence structure and figure out if they're simple or determine if they're more complex. So here we go. She says, hey, Mark, I heard you're interested in Sherry. Wow, that's really good to know. She's a really awesome person. So you're really shy about it, and so on. So do you consider those to be simple sentences, or are they complex structures? This is actually going to help your score. The more complexity you have, the higher your score under this listenability dimension. Yeah, and I'm looking at my chat box, and most people have it. These are simple sentence structures. All right, for the most part, almost all the way through. Every now and then, she will give us an interesting connecting word like this one, especially. But for the most part, she's relying on little words like but, and, so, and. These are very basic conjunctions or joining words. So a tip for all of you coming into your CELPIP, if you can study at home right now and learn how to create complex structures using more interesting words than just and, so, but, you will score better under the listenability factor. So that's one thing that the raters also commented on, is too many simple sentences, not enough complexity. Okay, now that's just listenability though. That's one of those 3 or the 4 areas of the checklist. So before we can guess her score, we have to make sure we understand how she's performed under content, under vocab, and under task fulfillment. So I'm going to start with content next. I really want to look at the structure of this answer, and together we can hopefully find the pieces of advice that she gives us. So first and foremost, she has used the correct name from the test instructions, which is great. It's a friend, so it's perfectly fine to be casual. She goes, hey, Mark. That's how most of us would talk to a friend, so this is great. Now, remember how we invented the name Lucy when we did our practice earlier? This speaker used the name Sherry, so that's wonderful. She's got a specific name. It's a really easy way to get an extra detail in there. And she simply summarized the test question just to set the context. So she's explained, oh, Mark's interested in Sherry. Sherry's really great. Oh, but you're shy. So up to here, she's more or less just introduced the main topic and the situation using her own words for the most part. So this is great. She then launches into her first piece of advice. So she also suggests that Mark maybe try to meet up with Sherry for a coffee, maybe something to do in the lunch hour, perhaps having lunch with Sherry as well. So there are two pieces of advice here for the how. How are we going to talk to Sherry in this case? But if you follow my laser pointer, you might notice that we're talking in circles. We start to repeat ourselves. So we have ask for coffee, have lunch, I guess. And then if you come way down here, you'll notice again, ask for coffee, ask for lunch. So we don't want to repeat the same details. The raters will be more impressed if we've got new and interesting details to include. Our speaker does sneak in a third detail. She does say maybe find time to have a drink with this woman, Sherry. So that would be 3 pieces of advice for the how. How are we going to talk to Sherry? But I only noticed 1 piece of advice for the topic. We have to advise Mark how or what topics of conversation he's going to talk about. I'll rest my laser pointer up here, and I'm wondering if someone here in the audience can identify the 1 topic of conversation that our test taker has included. We came up with several, if you remember back in that chat box, but this speaker, unfortunately, only came up with 1. And all of the 90 seconds she had to talk, she only identified 1. And you all have it, it's here. She says to Mark, why don't you ask Sherry about a project, okay? But once again, I noticed down here, we end up talking about the project once again. And did you notice that we don't have any of those specific details? So when we say talk about a project, all she has said is very generally, or something like that. So we don't even know what the project is like. And then again, the details themselves make sense. But when you start looking at the phrasing, and we're sort of jumping into listenability again, the grammar or the structure is off. So she says to Mark, why don't you just ask for a coffee, like during lunch break? So we sort of know what the ideas mean, but they're not phrased incredibly clearly, right? Maybe we could make this better by saying to Mark, saying, Mark, why don't you join Sherry in the kitchen and pour a cup of coffee, same time as she is? Why don't you actually try to sit with her during the lunch break? Little details like this would need to be added in. And it's like that all the way through. I'll just point out maybe 1 more example so you'll get the idea. I noticed this one. She says, they just approach in a kind of a little bit wrong way or something like that. So we have all sorts of little phrases and expressions that we can guess what the meaning is, but the way that it's worded, it's just a little bit muddled. It's a little bit unclear. So our speaker is developing her skills, but she still has some fine tuning to do to become absolutely fluent in the way she's expressing these ideas. Okay, so again, at least under task fulfillment, she's answered the question. She's given advice about the how and the what, but she's only done it, or she's done it in an unbalanced way. 3 examples for how, only 1 example for what. So once again, this would be a slight weakness. She did speak for 90 seconds though, and that's a strength, right? So that's a good thing. And last but not least, can we end with the vocab? I'll just rest my laser pointer again at the top. And I'm wondering if any of you have examples of vocabulary you see here that stand out to you as quite high level, or maybe just words that are a little more impressive than others, or just a little bit more interesting. So again, if you're targeting a level 9, you're trying to go above and beyond that common everyday word usage. So again, we don't want to use words like something like that. That's really plain. We want to have a little more wow factor to the words that we're using. Okay, so I'm seeing words like initiate. I'm seeing words like creep out. I'm seeing words like casually all coming into the chat box. And yeah, those were all the words. Even awesome. I like that one too, Cyril. Yeah. So there are some words that I would point out, you know, things like, again, I liked especially, creeped out was good. Creeped out is just a slang way of saying uncomfortable. So that worked out quite well. Casually is a good one. So we have some evidence of words. We're starting on that path, but I think we have more evidence of awkwardly phrased ideas or very general language such as this. You know, I hope she likes it, and ask her for lunch or something like that. You can see that those are quite general. So with that in mind, I'm going to show you very quickly a summary. This is a summary of what the raters pointed out from all 4 of the categories that they need to assess you on. You can see some strengths listed here and some weaknesses. And we've talked about all of these now, I believe, at this point. So I'm going to ask you now to see if you can guess what score you feel the speaker probably earned on her response. Remember, you've only got 4 choices today to choose from. So this speaker earned either a level 5, 8, 9, or 12. So I'm curious to see, some of you probably have studied CELPIP before. You might be a little more familiar with the scoring. If you're brand new to CELPIP, this will be hard because you have nothing to compare it to. But you can maybe look at those descriptor words, right? Like level 12 is advanced, level 9 is effective, level 8 good, level 5 is acquiring. So what do you think? Where does she land? Where does she land here? We have quite a variety of guesses coming in. So some of us think 5, some of us think 8, a few 9s on the board. Nobody has guessed 12, and I fully agree with that. It's definitely not advanced level. I'm going to reveal the score for you now. She got an 8. And a level 8 is a good score, we have to keep in mind. It's just level 8 speakers are still lacking the complexity across all 4 areas. And as a matter of fact, I'll read to you right now the summary of what a level 8 speaker can generally do. So if you earn a level 8 in speaking, what it means is you can communicate details and a broad range of feelings and preferences in most familiar and some less familiar contexts. You have control of some complex grammar and a good range of commonly used vocabulary. So more of the words would be common. Your mistakes in pronunciation seldom make it hard for people to understand your meaning. So there might be some mistakes, but we can always figure it out. We can always understand the gist of it. Okay, but again, a level 8 speaker doesn't have consistent complex sentence structure. They lack that consistent, precise vocabulary choice. And again, they don't have a lot of those precise details that we brainstormed earlier. So level 8 is still good. It just means you have a little bit more development to go before you'll earn that level 9, which is the coveted score that most people are aiming for anyways. Yeah. Hamed, yeah, the speed definitely does influence the score for sure. Most often, it's really rare in all the practice sessions I've ever conducted like this. I've heard only one example of a speaker that spoke so quickly, even I had a hard time understanding what she was saying. Usually, if people have a problem with the speed, it's the opposite. They talk so slowly that it literally takes half the time just to get a few sentences out, right? So yes, if you are speaking so slowly to the point that it's unnatural, and to the point that your listener is anxiously waiting for you just to get the words out, then yeah, that's definitely going to have a negative impact on your listenability performance. That's the part of that checklist that assesses the speech, right? Be that as it may, I mean, people that speak really slowly often don't even have time to introduce a lot of details. So it usually ends up being a detriment in the other areas too. So speak in a way that's comfortable for you, but you have to also make sure that it's natural for the listener, right? I hope that makes sense. Yeah, exactly. Cyril, again, Cyril, make your comments public. You have such great ideas, but nobody can read them but me. I'm going to read to you what Cyril just wrote in to me. And Cyril's saying both extremes should be avoided. 100% agree. Find a middle ground and go from there. All right, so let's just wrap up task 1 and we'll move on. So when you're giving advice, it is a role play. So speak to the person. If there's a name on the test, you're going to use that name. If there's no name, then you're going to make up the name. Be precise there. For 90 seconds, I think most of us would want at least 3 pieces of advice. And to earn better points for the content detail, you're always going to want to give those examples that we talked about earlier. So if you're asking Sherry about a work project, well, what kind of a project is it? Let's be more specific. So this is the way I'm hoping that you'll think about all these questions as you come in to take your test. Okay, and your tone as well should be helpful, should be thoughtful. Our speaker, by the way, that you just heard, she had a wonderful tone. Even at the end, she goes, well, you know, good luck with that, Mark. I hope she likes it. And so she's doing her best to use words that show encouragement. And that's exactly the right approach for this task 1 for sure. All right, I'm moving on to task 2. Let's do it. Task 2 is literally all about you. It's talking about a personal experience from the past. So everything you talk about here would likely be using past tense verbs. Can you quickly read this question? And I just want to make sure everybody understands what it is we're supposed to talk about. So read it through first. Again, you have 30 seconds to read and think. So the faster you read it, the more time you have to think. So I think you can get this done in 6 or 7 seconds. That would be a good aim for you. So the topic that you're supposed to talk about will always be introduced right here in the first sentence. So this one, the topic that we have to talk about for this question is a class that we enjoyed, and that's important. You can't just start going on and on about a class you really hated. If you did that in your actual answer, you'd be completely off topic and you'd score poorly under task fulfillment because you're not even answering the question. So just make sure you're not just talking about any class. It has to be one that you enjoyed for this particular question. This second sentence, sometimes even the 2 sentences like you see here in task 2, is always going to start with the word maybe. And maybe means it's a suggestion. So believe it or not, this test question is actually trying to help you out. So it's saying to you, you have to talk about a class you enjoyed, but maybe it could be a class you took at school, or maybe it could be something fun like cooking or music. So you would have to pick your class and again, be specific. You're not just going to say, oh, I loved math. That is far too general. Math can be calculus, it can be finite, it can be algebra, it can be what other types come to your mind, right? So again, the more precise you are, the better. Do you want to quickly run some ideas by the group? Does anyone here, if this was your question, what would be an example of a class that you really enjoyed? Okay, yoga is a good one, Danaji. What type of yoga? Let's add even more detail in there. There's so many types. Cooking class, Mazita. Oh, what type? Were you learning how to make Italian cuisine? Were you making desserts? What type of cooking? Leo, swimming, fantastic. Were you learning synchronized swimming or were you learning swimming for beginners, for example? Art's a good one, Tindy, but what type of art? Abstract painting or oil on canvas? Do you see what I'm doing? Push, push, push. So if all you're doing is listing just those general topics, that is level 8. And if you want to get up into the level 9 for content details, you're going to need to remember to be very precise and to give those specific examples. The more detail, the better for all included. Simon, fantastic. Chef training. I'd even want to know again a little more. Chef training for what? Like chef training on like a sushi chef, a sous chef, that kind of stuff. There we go. Michael, thank you. Cooking spicy pasta. You can even go further. Cooking, well, pasta is a general term, but anyway, you got it. Pasta could mean a bunch of stuff. So maybe pick your own cuisine, but yeah, good stuff. Okay, so that's the specific detail that I'm hoping you'll include. So I have an answer for you now. We're going to go through. This one is another woman speaking, I believe. Yeah. So again, we'll listen to her voice. I'll ask you to identify some strengths and weaknesses of her speech, but then we're really going to get into the content details, see what we can do about that. So let's listen in here.
Start speaking.
So the class I really enjoyed is my gender and socialized study at my college, and the topic for that course is like studying the gender situation in Canada. So first of all, our group prepared a paper survey, and also a website survey, and we hand out the paper survey in campus and also the shopping mall to get the answer from the people. And there we also send the website survey to our classmate, and we collect all the answer and summarize it statement for our studies.
Okay, so maybe can I open it up to all of you listening right now, just based on the speech that you've just heard. So think about things like pronunciation, pausing, interjecting. If you know enough about sentence structure, you're welcome to look at that as well. But I'm opening it up to you to see what you thought about strengths or weaknesses. Anything at all that you want to comment on. We'll do this quickly, we hope, so we can really get into the content. Okay, I didn't find that she spoke too slowly. I don't think it was the pace you're noticing. You're sort of on the right track. Aha, Mianis, thank you. It's the repetition that is slowing down the overall response. And there's a difference. So as she's speaking, the speed at which she delivers these words is actually pretty natural. But again, you're definitely onto it. You've identified the main issue with this. And I think that's what one of you meant when you said she stammers. She ends up repeating all of these words. Okay, right here. Or here, sorry, right here. She says the topic for this, for that course. We hand out the paper. We also send it out, and so on and so on. So, you know, repeating yourself once here and there is not a problem, but you can see all the way through in just about every sentence, there are these massive repetitions. So I think that's what you meant when she said she was speaking slowly. It's not technically the pace, it's all the repetition that is causing the issue. And that's why also this response is a little bit shorter on screen. She doesn't have the opportunity to get out as many relevant details because she spent most of her time, the 60 seconds, repeating all those words. So that's a little unfortunate, but pronunciation is excellent. Some of you caught that, so I think that's great. Marilyn has correctly identified another weakness for us. Thank you for that. The sentence structure is quite simple. And if you don't know a lot about sentence structures, I think one thing to do is notice, sometimes you might notice there are lots of short, literally short sentences on screen, but I would encourage you even just to look at the first word in a lot of these sentences. Let's do that now. So we see the word so, and, right? So that's your proof there. So we have basically the basic simple sentence structure that almost exclusively relies on the most basic and common of all English words, the word and, to connect together. So the raters would notice that and they would say, okay, we understand your ideas, but what we would need in order to achieve a higher score, say level 9 and up, is we would need more complexity with more interesting words. There are so many words we could choose from, you know, words like because, additionally to, another thing I liked, consequently, on the other hand. So again, before you come into CELPIP, it might be a wise idea to learn how to use 10 or 12 of these most common joining words or conjunctions, know how to use them properly, and they're really going to elevate not just your speaking, but also your writing on the test. So it's the same sort of thing there too. Good. Okay. So that covers the listening part, I think, quite well. Let's also get into, maybe after listenability, let's get into the content. So remember, she's supposed to be talking about a class she enjoyed. So she did read this right off the test instructions, which is not ideal, but at least we understand the topic. So we do know it's a class she enjoyed, but I'm wondering if anybody here truly understands what the class is. So all she has said here is, the class is the Gender and Socialize, starting at my college. So I think the word gender by itself is a very interesting vocabulary word. And I also think socialize is a really interesting vocab word, but they don't go together in this way. I don't understand what the meaning is. And I'm wondering if maybe one of you can guess what she's trying to say. So she introduces it here as a gender and socialize. And then she tries to expand on that here, but it's still a bit unclear. She says the class is like starting the gender situation in Canada. So we need to be more precise than that. We need to clarify exactly what it is this class was all about. So I'm wondering if any of you have a suggestion or an idea that you think maybe the speaker is trying to explain. She is actually Danaji in her own way trying to describe the class, but clearly her vocabulary just isn't quite developed enough to do so in a very succinct way. Yeah, Nadia has a great idea. Maybe it has something to do with cultural diversity, and that vocabulary is wonderful. So if you include words like that, Nadia, in your speech, you're going to get strong marks for vocab for sure. Arcana, you've got a great idea privately. I'd like to share it. It says it's the importance of gender in socializing with others in society. There you go. Gender equality, Lewis. That's a wonderful focus topic and so on. Okay, so all these ideas coming in make sense, but do you see what the problem is? All of them make sense, and we don't know which is the one that this speaker actually intended. So clearly she needs a little bit of focus, right, before she gets into it. So let's just go with something to do with gender equality, I guess. And then down here, she starts to explain what she did in class. And all we understand is that she prepared the survey, handed out paper, but did you notice she waffles back and forth between past tense, which is correct, and then present tense, which is confusing. So this is a grammar mistake. This would actually be noticed under listenability. All right, so anyway, something to do with the paper service, and then they're getting answers and they're sending out the website survey and summarizing it. And that's all fine and well. Does anybody here know why this woman really, truly enjoyed this class? Do you feel that she actually fully addressed the question? The question said, talk about a class that you enjoyed. We sort of have a sense about what this class is. We know exactly what she did in the class, but she didn't elaborate fully on why she enjoyed doing this so much. So that's what's missing. And I think if we could go back in time and remove all these repetitions, it would probably free up a good 15 seconds on the clock. And that would be more than enough time to explain why it is we enjoyed this class so much. So yeah, she's on the right track. She sort of addresses the question, but in an incomplete way. So anyway, when we try to assess this one, the last one was a level 9. So think of that as your benchmark. Decide for yourself if this second response is the same level of that one, or if it's higher, or if it's lower. And then maybe we'll try to guess what score it got of these 4 that have been identified on screen. Yeah, so remember, I'll just repeat this one more time. So all the responses today scored either level 5, 8, 9, or 12. So it couldn't be a level 2. It couldn't be a level 6. We didn't choose any responses from those levels today. So if you're guessing level 5, you are absolutely correct. This is what a level 5 speaker in general terms can produce. So sure, they're still communicating their feelings and preferences, but it's usually in a familiar context. A level 5 speaker would have a hard time imagining abstract concepts and explaining other ideas and extending them. So all of the descriptions we get would have to be based on experiences that were quite familiar, like handing out a survey and summarizing those details and so on. The grammar and the vocabulary will be quite simple as well in level 5. So think of level 5 in my own words. When I see these responses, I say the level 5 speaker actually gets the job done. They answer the question, but again, we just have more development to do. We always seem to understand the points that they're making, or at least have an inkling as to what they're talking about, but you can contrast this sharply against the level 8 that you saw earlier, and you'll note the differences between beginner. This would be sort of like a beginner level, and then the intermediate that we saw for level 8. At any rate, whatever your task 2 CELPIP test question is, it's going to be based on a life experience. Hopefully you've got your own actual experience to talk about. If not, make something up as long as it answers the question. Just remember to stick with your past tense verbs and try to be as interesting and descriptive. When you're telling a story, even about yourself, think of those 5 W's. Like the who would be you, obviously it's your story, but precisely explain what it is you did and throw in details like when. When did you study this class? What university or college did you take this class in? And why did you enjoy it so much? So if you can capture those details, you're going to have a nicely organized and interesting story to share. So that might help with the score too, depending. All right, moving right along. Let's get into our first picture task of the day. 4 of the 8 tasks on CELPIP speaking are all involving pictures. And task 3 is always the same. You're literally looking at the picture on screen and you're going to describe some things that are happening. That's the task. So as if they're happening right in this moment. It also says that the person with whom you are speaking can't see this picture. So when you start talking about the scene, I'd like you to do 2 things. I'd like you to, first of all, imply that you have someone listening. So you might just say even something simple like, I'm looking at a picture of. So that implies that you are describing it out loud to an unknown listener. So that's step 1. The second thing I would love for you to do is to provide an overview. So looking at this picture on the screen, can somebody please identify as precisely as you can the room that we're looking at? So this is clearly not a bank. It's not a library. What is this exact location, would you say? Yeah, we have grocery store, we have supermarket, grocery, yeah. I wouldn't say grocery shop. Those two words don't go together so naturally in English. So supermarket or grocery store would probably be the best here. There was another word that international test takers introduced to me. Hypermarket. Do one of you know that word? I can't remember it. It's used, I think, overseas, but not in Canada. It's not a Walmart, Rich, nice one. Anyway, hypermart. Is that the word, Nadia? That's a real word, right? Okay. So hypermarket, in my life, I had never heard this word. It's not commonly used in Canada, but if this is a word that's common wherever you grew up and you chose to include it here, the raters will understand. You know, instead of saying supermarket, if you said hypermarket, it's clear enough that the raters will still catch what you're saying. So I just wanted to clarify that. Anyway, start with your overview and then be very specific about what these people are doing. Let's do one really quickly together, just for interest's sake. Let's do these guys. I always do these ones because they're the most interesting. So you get to choose what you want to describe. You know, you can't describe it all. You've only got 60 seconds, and there's no way you're going to have time to talk about every single person in the scene. So pick a starting point. You know, if you start by describing what these three people are doing, then maybe you just want to work your way around the picture in a circle like this. Or maybe you start at the back and you make your way to the front, or you know, go from left to right. It doesn't really matter, but try your best to organize yourself. How would we describe these people? Let's start with these two kids. Now, the word kids is a little simple. Can we do better than that? Rather than say kids, what are these two people doing? And again, people is a really plain word too. Can you imagine who these people are to each other? I think they know each other based on what's happening here. Okay, children's coming in, sure. Can we go one step up? What's another word? Aha, look at this, siblings. Siblings is a more interesting word than children, isn't it? It's not so common. So I would use siblings then to try to really impress the raters. So like I know what I'm talking about, yeah. So siblings just means a brother and sister. That's all that means. Ashanya is suggesting toddlers, perhaps, but they look a little bit old. A toddler is usually up to about the age of 3 at the max. And these two look like they're probably at least 6 or 7. So again, we want to be precise. Maybe they're friends, but I think the siblings word is much more interesting and much more precise. Okay, so how about this? Why don't we say, I'm looking at a picture of many customers buying groceries at a supermarket. So let's start our scene like that. We might just say, at the back of the store, 2 siblings are, what are they doing? What's the action? This is the main part of this whole response. You have to describe what is happening in present time. So 2 siblings they're doing something with watermelons, right? So what are they doing here? They are picking up watermelons, sure. They are trying to get the watermelons out of the produce stand. They are choosing a watermelon to take home. They are reaching into the watermelon stand, I guess you would say. They are pointing at the watermelons at the back. Sure, you've got it. There are so many different descriptions that make sense. So you're going to choose your best, most interesting available idea that comes into your mind. So 2 siblings are selecting a watermelon from the produce stand at the back of the store, and their older brother in a red hockey jersey is walking towards them to offer his help, right? So you're just making it up as you go. And as long as what you're saying makes sense, that's all you can ask for. So again, this one, in the sense of time, you will never run out of things to talk about. Trust me on this. You will never have a chance to talk about every person in 60 seconds. So if you're adding more detail like what we just did, you'll have probably talk about fewer parts of the scene, but that's okay. I would say most people on average seem to cover between 3 to 5 parts of the scene. I personally feel it's better to have fewer parts and more detail. I think that's the better way to go to earn more points for your detail and more points for your vocabulary. Okay, but play around with this at home when you're practicing and see what works best for you. Detail, you can never go wrong with detail, right? All right, I'm going to play this response for you now. I'm going to do so actually while we're looking at the picture so we can all assess how accurately this woman is describing the scene. So after you've heard it, feel free, let's just open it up in general. Any strengths? Let's focus on the strengths. What does this woman do really well in any category? Feel free to share that with us as we listen.
Well, I can see a supermarket hall. It's quite large, not very busy. There are about 9 people there. I can see 2 cashiers. One of them is closed, so only one register is actually opened. There are 3 rows at the supermarket. There are a lot of vegetables selling. Looks like oranges and lemons are on sale. There are 2 kids who are very excited. They're picking up the watermelons. There is also a boy with his mother who looks like he wants to buy, well, I'm not sure if it's a book or it's a bag of cookies. Another boy is asking his father to buy him something in the...
Okay. Now she got cut off at the end, but luckily for her, she had offered several accurate descriptions of the scene. So in this case, it's not going to be a problem that she was cut off there at the end. Thought I'd mention that first. Okay, I'm going to turn my attention now to the chat box. Let's see what she's done quite well. Yeah, Leo says she is giving very accurate, precise details about the parts of the scene. I noticed that too. It's descriptive to a point. I thought her vocab was a tiny bit simple though, if I'm honest. So everything she said was accurate, but we're just getting words like oranges, watermelon, lemons. She does mention at one point that the kids were excited. So that was a nice detail to throw in. But I think she could have elevated her vocab a little bit more. I think that was the biggest weakness. But I do appreciate how well she organized her response as she moved it around. She did definitely answer the question and gave us a very thorough account of what's happening here. Yeah, her tone would be appropriate for this. You're literally just talking about what you see. Again, I can show you the transcript super quick here. Just it helps us sometimes to visualize the words on screen. Her sentence structure in a few places is simple. A few places like here. This is simple. This is simple. There are, they are. So that could definitely be improved upon. But she also does demonstrate emerging ability to create these longer, more complex structures. So she says there's also this boy with his mother who looks like he wants to buy. Not sure if it's a book or if it's a bag of cookies and on. So we do see some emerging complexity. So that's going to help her. So the raters would have to say, okay, a couple simple areas, couple complex, really well organized, vocab's a bit simple, and so on. Clear speech, though. Pronunciation's crystal clear. So based on her strengths and her weaknesses, what do you think? What level do you think she scored? You know, is this strong enough to get into the level 9? Level 9, we now know it definitely shows more complexity with your descriptions, your details, your vocab, or is this a level 8? This might be in between for you, I don't know. Yeah, this is what I'm noticing in my chat box. We're sort of torn between levels 8 and 9, and I agree with that. I know what the score is as I've delivered this webinar before. But the first time I listened, I myself wasn't quite sure either. I got a bit stuck on the fact that her vocab was a little bit, like we didn't have the description, I guess, that we're looking for. But the raters still gave her a level 9. Remember, your scores are rounded up or down to the nearest level 2, right? So this could be something like an 8.5, but then that would round up to a level 9. So again, she's done just enough in all other areas of the checklist, you can argue, to show those complex thoughts. And her organization is stellar. She starts with the big picture and she moves sort of bit by bit around the scene. So demonstrating these strengths in all other areas is making up for the fact that she's lacking a little bit of description in the vocab. So yeah, she did all these things. She started with her overview, you know, she's looking at a supermarket haul, I think she said. She did build that picture. And she didn't wrap it up, but she gave enough detail, so it's not a problem. Anyway, that's your task 3. Task 4 is exactly the same picture, but you have a completely different focus. So this time you're going to make predictions. You have to guess what will likely happen next. So this time we're using future verb tenses. You're going to use words like will, might, possibly, probably, could, so stuff like that. Can we do one example as a group? Let's go back. We had worked on these 3 earlier. We talked about what they were doing in the present moment. That was task 3. We said the siblings are selecting a watermelon out of the produce stand at the back of the store. Okay, so that's task 3. Task 4, you're going to predict what they'll do next. So could we start the sentence like this? Could we say, you know, the brother and sister who are lifting the watermelons out of the stand at the back of the store will probably Can somebody finish that thought for us, please? they will probably, are the kids going to fall down, Manoj, or are the watermelons going to drop? So the kids will probably drop a watermelon, and the watermelon is going to smash all over the linoleum floor and make a huge mess. Their brother is going to rush in towards them and scold them for being so careless, while the rest of the people in the store continue their shopping, and so on and so on. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, Vishwa, I just took your answer. Sorry for that. You had the same idea I did. Do you notice how Vishwa's also using descriptive detail? And that's nice. He's saying the kid or the young child in the yellow shirt might not be able to hold the watermelon up, and his dad will rush in to help support it. Excellent. So feel free to use any descriptive. If you want to talk about the colors of the clothes or the facial expressions, the age of the people, these are the types of descriptive details that are going to make your answer more interesting and help you earn a higher score. Fantastic. Okay, so I'm going to, again, play this response while we're looking at this picture. We're going to listen to a woman try to make some predictions, and our job is to figure out how accurate her predictions are, but also identify strengths and weaknesses in other areas. Okay, so here we go.
Next, I think the girl with her daddy is checking out by the cashier. I think they will go outside, and the two children who is choosing the watermelon, and they will find the better one, they think. And a boy with a box of pie, I think they will pay for that because his daddy looks very happy about that. And the other one, and a boy with yellow hair, and he chose a box of cookie, I think so. And her mom maybe gave him some suggestion, because her mom looks a little bit don't like this kind of cookie. And the man with the woman with the purple shirt, she will feel her shopping cart will not.
Okay, she got cut off as well. She did actually give some predictions. Before I start asking about this, I'm sorry, a few of you managed to sneak in a good prediction here in the chat box. The last 3 of you did. And I'd like to comment on how well your predictions are coming along. The one little revisional element I would suggest you do, though, is just double check you're using a future tense. So we want to use words like will. We don't want to say words like would or would be, per se. So try to focus on saying will. And if you're doing that consistently, it will help with the grammar. But I like all 3 of those ideas. I think it's great. Nadia, you've introduced a new word to the bunch of us, I bet you. The word is raucous. You're close. Raucous is actually an adjective. The way your sentence reads, Nadia, you want to just change it out for the noun version, which is ruckus. It's almost the same word. So Nadia, you would say the siblings will probably cause a ruckus. And a ruckus is almost like a slang word that just means a lot of mess and a lot of noise. So very descriptive, and it's very interesting. That's fantastic. So keep thinking that way, and your story will come alive, and it will help with your vocab for sure. Good. Yeah. So, and thank you. Ariamni is asking a very good question. So in task 3, you're describing what's happening right then and there in the moment. In task 4, which we're now talking about, you're predicting what might happen next. So it's the exact same picture. You're just doing 2 completely different tasks using different verb tenses. So just make sure that you're following those instructions. Yeah, for sure. Okay, so back to this one. I guess by now I can show you the transcript. Let's figure out what she's done well and where she needs to improve upon. Again, most of her pronunciation's okay. There was 1 or 2 words we had a hard time with. So in the transcript, we even just put the word unclear in these square parentheses. But I think most of her pronunciation is okay. What do you think? What else can we comment on? What did you think about her speech? Did she speak too slowly? This is an instance where I think she didn't repeat herself, but I think she spoke just a little bit slowly. And that's why, again, on the screen, her transcript's actually a bit shorter than the majority of responses we look at. So I think if she could speed things along just a bit, she'd have a little more time, you know, maybe throw in another sentence or 2, a particular detail. I think that would help her for sure in that area. This is the first one where the speech is too slow that we've seen today. I noticed some interjections as well, right? So she's trying her best to think of her ideas, but she's Still stuttering a little bit with the uhs and the ums. Okay, and again, sentence structure, a little bit simple. Almost every sentence does begin with that word and. So we're now accustomed to recognizing that that's probably simplistic, right? And some self-corrections too. Her predictions though, even though she's having a hard time getting the ideas out, if you're just looking at the actual content details, namely the predictions, she does give several predictions and she actually makes them accurate. So she does suggest that, you know, these people are going to go outside. That's in the first sentence. She says they will pay for the items, in this case, the pie. The woman will fill her shopping cart and so on. So there are a lot of accurate predictions, but there are also predictions that need to be more precise. You know, she just says these two children choosing the watermelon, I think they'll find the better one. So we're not 100% clear what that means. So again, a few steps forward and a couple of things to brush up upon. Okay, her vocab gets the job done, but she's got some room for development. This is a good example. So the boy she's talking about that's choosing that box of cookies, she describes him as having yellow hair. And we know what she means, of course, but in English, we wouldn't say ever that somebody has yellow hair. What would be the correct word here? Does anyone know? When you're talking about somebody's hair that's yellow, the word that we're supposed to use is blonde, exactly. So this is an example of an imprecise word choice. We know what she means, but it's just not quite accurate. We would never ever use that expression in English to describe the person. But anyway, a few things done quite well, but on the whole, we have more development in pretty much most areas. So again, looking just at the rater's notes, yeah, we already talked about those simple structures. We need to really embellish those ideas. More preciseness we've talked about too, a slow rhythm and some interjections. Her sentence structure is simple and so on. You know, she talks a bit slow. So with all that in mind, there would be more probably areas to work on than there would be notable strengths here. So if you're looking to pick a level for her, where do you feel that she ranked? Is this sort of that beginner level or the intermediate or the advanced? Where would you put it? This is we're halfway through. So this is the 4th of 8 tasks. So I'm hoping we're starting to get the hang of this, getting a feel for it. And this woman definitely earned, yeah, this is a level 5 again. So level 5 speaker always answers the question. We just need a bit more clarity and generally more complexity across the board. But she's off to a good start. So more or less high beginner. Okay, I would love it if all of you had the opportunity right now to practice yourself. You haven't done any practice yet today, and I think it would be wise to try this yourself. So what I'm going to do right now is remind you all that your microphones are muted. So nobody will hear you if you start talking out loud right now, so don't be shy. I hope you've got your cell phone ready. You can just hit record when you start to speak. And again, type out your own transcript after the session or sometime tomorrow and look at the words you're saying, and then you'll know what you're doing well and which areas you want to improve upon. So I'm going to advance to the next screen and you're going to see a new picture that I've not shown you yet today. And I'm going to set a timer right away for 30 seconds. So you'll see that the timer on screen counting down. You will have those 30 seconds to look at this picture and start thinking of the predictions that you want to make. So think about the future. Look at the people, figure out what they might do next. After the 30-second timer has finished, I'll set the next timer for 1 minute. And I would love it if you could speak right out loud and try to formulate your predictions. Use your future tense verbs to do this. We'll see how well it goes for you. Okay. If it's your first time practicing, it's probably going to feel very challenging. And I don't want you to worry about that. I just want you to try and see how it feels to speak for 1 minute out loud. All righty, let's try to have some fun with this. Here's your picture. Okay, the timer at the top has started, 30 seconds. So figure out what these people might do next. Okay, prep time has finished, so now it's time to talk. You don't have to set the scene for this. You just start right in. You might just say something like, the man who's running on the treadmill at the back of the gym will probably da 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 da. So just pick your starting point and launch right into your first prediction. Okay, I'm going to set the timer there at the bottom now for 1 minute. So just keep an eye there so you know when to finish. Here we go. Time is up. So that's 1 minute. So if that were the test, the recording would just stop, finished or not. Okay, now out of curiosity, how many predictions did you have time to make? If you wanted to share that in the chat box, it just gives us a sense about what everyone's doing. There's no right or wrong answer here. Well, I take that back. You can't just have one prediction or it doesn't count as a full answer. But I think 3 to 5 is a good balance, but let's see what you've done here. Yeah, so between 3 and 4, it looks like for the most part, people are doing. Okay, so if you're presenting 3 predictions in your minute, what that means then is that you're likely giving quite a bit of description for each of those 3. Because when you do the math, that would be about 20 seconds for each prediction, right? So that's very possible. But yeah, and again, if you still have time on the clock to fill, just start talking about a different part of the scene. So you shouldn't have to worry about filling the time. There's always something to say. Okay, but that was making your predictions. We don't have a ton of time, but do any of you want to practice out a couple of your predictions here in the chat box? Why don't we pick one together just to make it easy, and that way they have a focus. So why don't we take this guy right here? So to introduce him, you probably want to quickly make sure everyone knows who you're talking about. So you might just say, the teenage boy who is boxing in the corner of the gym will. How would you finish that sentence? Let's just see what you come up with there in the chat box. So try to be imaginative, but be realistic. So what is this kid going to do? So the teenage boy who is boxing in the corner of the gym will. So I've given you the past first. I've given you the future tense verb, but you're going to come up with the next part. He will. Okay, continue to exercise, Michael says. Sure, that makes sense. What else might he do? Will. Ahmed, that's exactly what I was thinking. Fall on the ground accidentally because he's punched the bag so hard and that little girl is going to get knocked over. So yeah, that's imaginative, but it could happen. I mean, it's a good detail to include, right? It could absolutely happen for sure. Oh, Cyril, and their ideas are coming in so fast, I can't keep up. But yeah, Cyril said something about take off his boxing gloves to go use the restroom. Sure. There are just so many different ideas that you could use, and you're only asked to come up with one. Throw a big punch. Yeah. Oh, I like this one too. Oluwat Thomason is saying, throw such a big punch at the bag that he's going to hurt his hand and he won't be able to continue to exercise today. Sure. You know, and after this, Simon says he's going to take a break and so on. So yeah, you could probably talk for a good 15 seconds about what he's doing, and he's punching that bag and it's knocking him over, and then that poor girl is going to get hit, and it just sort of snowballs. And that's what you want. You want to connect the actions one to the next, as long as you're predicting the future. So nicely done there. It's fun when you have the imagination and the ability to do that as well. Good. Okay, Jerry, I don't know what a haymaker punch is. This has come in privately, but that sounds really cool to me. So Jerry is suggesting that the teenage boy will probably throw a haymaker punch, and that will hurt his hand immensely. I'm throwing that word in. So I don't know what a haymaker punch is, but it sounds very specific. So that's the right idea. Okay, so again, you know by now, use your imagination. Just make sure you're being realistic. That's the only thing. And use your future tenses there for the picture. All right, let's go on to task 5, which is a little bit confusing. So I'm going to try to explain it clearly for you. Task 5 is the only part of CELPIP speaking that is divided into 2 different parts. So the first part is comparing. And when you look at the screen, you notice you've only got a 60-second prep time. You're not even speaking. You're given 1 full minute to read over the situation here, and I'll summarize it for you. You're basically, your family wants to purchase one of those 2 fans below. So in this 60 seconds of prep time, look at the pictures, skim read over these bulleted points quickly, and then using your mouse at the computer, you are going to click on the image that represents the fan you think that the family should buy. Whichever item you choose, in part 2, you're actually going to speak to your family to try to persuade them that this is the better item. So choose wisely. You know, look at the ideas here, and you can start to use those as your main points, but you have to come up with extending details. So you'll notice that the large floor fan is $49.99. So you can state that aloud as you talk to your family. You know, that's the main idea, but then it's up to you to further that by explaining how that's an affordable option. You know, maybe they don't have to worry about buying additional batteries because all they have to do is plug it in. So you'll save money in the long run. So whatever ideas come to your mind that make sense, you're going to throw them in there to really support these main ideas. Yeah, it is kind of like comparing and contrasting, Simon. You're absolutely right. So you've got 60 seconds to do this. You're just thinking. And then right after the 60 seconds has finished, the computer will automatically move to part 2. So here's where it gets a bit confusing. The first part of this, part 2, you notice again, there's no speaking at all. There's only a preparation time clock at the top. So you have 60 seconds again to look at a brand new idea that your family is now suggesting. So you still are going with the floor fan. You've already chosen that, and that is the item that you're going to try to talk to your family in the next part to persuade them to buy. But as you do so, you're going to try to present this large floor fan as the best option. And then you can also throw in some details to say to the family that this little handheld mini fan is a terrible idea. And you can even give some weaknesses about it. Okay, so again, part 1, you had these 2 options. Whichever item you select, you're not ever going to need to talk about, in this case, the ceiling fan. So just ignore that. Oh, sorry, I'm hitting the wrong button. But in the second part, you're going to compare and contrast these 2 items. And these are the 2 items that will be facing you on the screen as you talk. So think of it that way. Present the floor fan as the best option, and this mini fan is a terrible idea. And you've got 60 seconds to make your case. So again, I'll play this woman's response for you, and very quickly we'll talk about what she's done well and where she needs to improve. Start to think about her score as well. You can even guess the score you think she earned right after you've listened. If you.
I agree that we have choices, but I believe the large floor fan is the most suitable for our requirement because we require the fan to be installed in our basement. I agree that the ceiling fan is a good option for our living room, but since we require the fan for the basement, I would say $49.99 is an affordable option and we would not require any extra installation. The portable mini fan, though just requires a battery, is not a good option for our basement because it wouldn't cover the area. It's a good option for outdoors, but since our requirement is for the basement, I would go with the large floor fan, and it can be moved around the house and used for different requirements later.
Not bad at all. Okay, we've had 1 guess so far in the chat box, so I'm not going to reveal the score yet, but I do want you to think about it on your own. Again, is it sort of beginner, intermediate, or advanced? I will say that this woman so far probably has the most smooth speech. There is not a single interjection. Look at the transcript, not a single or anywhere. And that is incredibly difficult to do. So her ability to pronounce these words and have that natural rhythm without any interruptions is marvelous. It's wonderful. There is a slight weakness with her listenability though. It's a strength and a weakness all in one, and I'll quickly show you. If you look closely at the transcript, I'm hoping you'll notice that the lengths of her sentences she speaks in are all very long. And every single sentence she includes is actually a complex or a compound complex sentence structure. She's connecting every time she pauses. That's why that comma is there. So this is one idea, and then she throws in a connecting word. Here she uses but, and then she connects that idea using the word because, and so on. So that's what makes this sentence compound, complex. She's using different types of joining words. And she does that all the way through. Here's another example. But, since, right? Two different words they're connecting. So yes, we see complexity, but the raters also notice that we tended to repeat the same type of structure. So she gets recognized for fantastic complex sentence structure, but it's a slight weakness that she's repeated the same conjunctions and structures time and again. So the raters did have that in their notes, but overall, with her listenability and her speech, she has many more strengths than she does have with that little weakness of the repetition. Okay, now her content details also make a lot of sense. She's got 3 of them, which is about average. 3 reasons why the floor fan she chose is the best choice. I'm going to find the first 2, and I'm hoping that you'll find the last one for me. So she says the floor fan, well, first of all, she makes up the detail that they're going to put that fan in the basement. And she really emphasizes that it's the size of the room. That's why they need the larger fan. So that all makes sense. And I like how she just created this very sensible idea. She uses the cost right from the screen. Now, remember, the mini fan is a lot cheaper. So it's her job to present $49.99 to the family as the better option. And the way she does that is she says, first of all, it's affordable to us. It's a fantastic vocab, I might add. But then she extends that further and she says, oh, and we don't even need any extra installation. So that's her way of kind of getting around the fact that this is a bit pricey, but since we don't need extra installation, she's implying we won't have to put more money out later. So those are those first 2 ideas, and they're almost a little bit abstract in that regard. What's the third one? Can you find it? Just keep reading. I've rested my laser pointer there. And if you just skim over those last couple of sentences, I'm hoping you'll see why the floor fan, she says, is the best choice. N10 has a great vocab word, mobility. I don't think I see that word in here, but I would like to have seen that word. That's a great choice. So moved around the house or portability. I think she says portable. I heard, yeah, right here. Oh, she says portable mini fan, sorry. Yeah, she never does talk about, she says that the fan can be moved around. So the idea is sound. I like all of your vocabulary better. If we say that the large floor fan is portable or has mobility, I think that's more interesting. But overall, she's got her 3 ideas and it all makes sense too. Her vocab is actually quite high too. When we see words like, would not require extra installation. And she even has natural expressions. I would go with the large floor fan and so on. One last thing I wanted to point out as a major strength that we've not yet seen today. So did you notice that when this woman started speaking, instead of just starting right with her opinion, rather than say, oh, the floor fan would be the best choice, she takes a moment to insert this little introductory phrase. And she says, I agree that we have choices, but I believe the floor fan is the most suitable. So why would we say this in the first place? Why not just get right to your point and carry on? There has to be a reason, right? Why she would take the time. So what is the purpose of this little phrase or this little idea? I agree that we have choices, but I think we should buy that floor fan. What is she doing there? How is she interacting with the listener? Remember, the listener is her family. She's role-playing with her family. So how does adding this little phrase first make things smoother with her family as she's talking? And Marilyn and Zhengwu have it really well done. Cyril as well. Yeah, she's showing respect for another perspective. So when we have an opinion to share, we have to remember that not everybody is going to automatically agree with us. So they might have a completely different idea of what's best. So before we share with them what we think, it's respectful and polite, courteous to first of all acknowledge that there might be different ideas, and then we come back to our own. So this is actually a higher level persuasive technique that she's thinking of throwing in. It's really, really enhancing the tone aspect of her score. So remember these 4 categories that we've talked about so much today. Under task fulfillment, that's where the tone is being scored. So her tone is the emotion she's creating through word choice. So again, by acknowledging her family might have a different idea and then presenting her idea, that's the best way to show respect in a persuasive argument. Higher level technique. Yeah, so she's got some good stuff going for her here. What score do you think she earned? It's pretty strong, but you have to ask yourself, does it show enough to earn that level 12? I don't think we've seen a level 12 today yet, have we? I don't remember. Yeah, level 12 is advanced. So this is, this is a level 9 again. Yeah. So she has a lot of strengths going for her. She still has a few areas to tighten up. We don't have the sophistication quite yet. So tone was wonderful, yes, but remember, that's just one little aspect of the whole response. So we still want to make sure that we're developing all of our ideas and using a few higher level words and so on. Okay, so again, remember how this task 5 is chunked for you. You have your first part where you have to think and make your choice, and it's in part 2 where you're actually speaking and carrying on the role play. So that's how that one goes. All right, moving right along, almost done. So we have task 6 here, and task 6 is dealing with a difficult situation. So you will have 60 seconds this time to read over the situation. And in my own words, I'll summarize. Actually, I'll read it to you. It says here, a customer comes into the store where you work. He wants to return a shirt that is ripped. Your coworker will not return the shirt because the customer has worn it. The customer is arguing that the shirt was of poor quality and should not have ripped so easily. Therefore, it should be returned. So it takes you a bit more time to read that and understand it. This is why you have more time to think. You also, in the prep time, have to look at the 2 different options presented, and you're going to pick one of them to talk about. So if you pick the first option here, you're going to talk directly to your coworker, and you have to come up with some reasons to explain why they should return that t-shirt, accept it back for a refund. Or you can do the opposite. You can talk to the customer and explain to the customer why they cannot take that t-shirt back and issue that refund. So in 60 seconds, you want to try your best to think of 3 main reasons to fill that time adequately. So again, I'll play for you this woman speaking. See if you can determine which of those 2 positions she's supporting. And I really want us to look at the details that she uses to see if they're accurate or not.
Hello, Eugene. I just heard that you had an argument with the customer regarding the ripped t-shirts. I think we have to return these t-shirts because as per the customer, she just wore only one times, and it is, I guess it clearly says that it's poor quality. Well, and before the other time, I remember that the same thing happened with another customer, and there was my supervisor, and the supervisor said we can refund the item when it clearly lacks some quality. And I think this brand has some warranty, so we can clearly double check with the manager. But I believe that we have to provide a warranty and provide a return for this customer as based on our previous experience. Thank you.
Okay, wonderful. So I noticed right at the beginning, she addresses somebody called Eugene. So do you know who Eugene is? Have a look at her first sentence and let's just double check we know exactly what her position is. So who is Eugene in this situation? She's made up this name. It wasn't in the test instruction. But yeah, you need to figure out, is she talking to the customer or is she talking to her coworker? Those were the 2 choices. And hopefully everyone has it. Yeah, she's talking to her coworker. So this is exactly how we should start the response, right? We identify our listener, and then we quickly summarize what's going on. The speaker says to Eugene, oh, I've heard you've had this argument regarding a ripped t-shirt. So that's a great little summary to introduce the topic. The next step we must do is present our opinion. And the speaker does that well. She says, I think we have to return the shirt because. So she does identify that position, right? And as soon as we hear the word because, we know the reasons are coming. So I'll find the first 2, and let's see if you can find the third one. There's sort of 2 ideas that go together here. So the first one is, she says, well, as per the customer, she just wore only 1 times. So I'm noticing lots of little tiny grammar mistakes here and little awkward word choices, but I understand the idea. So this t-shirt was worn once and it ripped, so it must have poor quality. So that's detail number 1 with an example. Okay, and then she says, and so it's a simple conjunction, but at least we know that the next idea is coming. She says, before the other time. So again, it's a bit unnatural, but we understand she's talking about her second example. She says, I remember the same thing happened with another customer, and my supervisor says we could refund it. So that's detail 2. Did you notice all the repetition though in her answer? We can refund the item. So it takes her a bit of time to get the idea out, but the idea itself makes sense. So strength for content, weakness as far as the speech and the vocabulary goes. What is the third idea here? Again, I just rested my laser pointer where we've left off. There is actually a third content detail to support why they should accept that t-shirt back. It kind of continues from here. Yeah, and thank you. Oluwat Thomason has got it in the chat box. So it has to do with the warranty. So again, she repeats herself though. She says, we can clearly double check with the manager, but she does very logically say, if there's a warranty, well then of course, based on the previous experience, we'd have to refund. So I see a lot of elements here of skill set that I'm liking. Like her logic is very sensible. It's just a matter of phrasing the words in a more coherent manner so that we're not making these little mistakes and repeating ourselves over and over again. But she does answer the question. She does speak for the full time. The ending is a little bit odd, and the raters commented on that. At the end, she says, thank you. And there's not really any reason to be thanking Eugene in this case. She's not ending a phone call. So the raters would say, just take that out at the end, and it would be a much better, more coherent response. But yeah, so here's a good one. She does answer the question, gives some adequate support. So this is higher than level 5 for sure. This is definitely not advanced, not with the number of little grammar and phrasing mistakes that we saw in the repetition. So she's definitely in the middle here. And I'm wondering if now you get the hang of, is it an 8, is it a 9? These are the two tricky ones to really figure out. A lot of us get stuck at level 8. We want to get to level 9. So what did this woman earn, do you think? Yeah, and most of you have it. You are definitely getting the hang of it. This is a level 8. So again, it's a good response. That is what level 8 is all about. But there are more tiny mistakes in grammar. We know the ideas, but we notice more consistent little mistakes in the grammar. We also notice the vocab tends to be a lot more consistently common. So she has a few words here and there that stand out, like warranty. That's a great idea. But overall, we still have, like, as per customer, we have more of that type of general, almost misused language as well. So level 8, once she nails that sentence structure and tidies up some of those grammar instances and takes out those repetitions, she will definitely be able to score higher, I think. Okay, now I'm looking at my clock, and I don't think we have time today to do another practice right now. So I'm just going to skip over the practice. That was going to be another task 6, but I'm going to skip that one over for now. And I'm just going to go right into task 7 so that I don't keep you late today as well. Oh, I'm sorry. Before I do that, Jerry has asked a private question about how we might end that response. So Jerry, if it's all right with you, I'd like to share with the group what you've written, because I think it makes sense. So rather than thanking Eugene, Jerry is suggesting maybe the speaker, the woman, could say something to Eugene like, I'm sorry if this sours your day, but I have the best of intentions and I really want our customer to be served well. Something like that, I think, would be very adequate here, because she's giving Eugene a very tough job. So something like that would work. So yeah, find a way that's logical to you. Nice suggestion there. Okay. For task 6, as we say, you're doing a role play. So talk to your person directly, explain the situation, and identify your position. You're going to be successful here by giving adequate support and expressing yourself clearly, which our speaker did a decent job of. She just needs a bit more practice. Okay, task 7, moving right along. This is a tough question. You've got only 30 seconds to think and 90 seconds to talk. But the question we're looking at today, luckily for you, in this short amount of prep time, is something that you're all doing now, presumably. The question says, do you think all high school students should be required to learn a second language? Now, all of you are studying English so that you can ace the CELPIP language proficiency test. So use your own background experience about your language learning to help guide your details for this answer if this was your test. So I'm going to share with you, this is actually my favorite response in this whole webinar. I love this woman's voice. So I'll play for you the whole response. It's 90 seconds almost on the nose. So she's got a very good command on the time and the pacing, but I really want you to figure out what position she's supporting. Does she want people to learn a second language? Yes or no? And then figure out which details she's using to support herself. There we go.
Yes, I think it's very beneficial for high school students to be required to learn a second language, especially here in Canada, to learn French. I've seen it in the workplace. It's very beneficial for workers to have a second language, especially French, because first thing, more compensation if you're bilingual, French bilingual. Right, that's first thing for me, and of course it opens up a whole new like field of work where you, if you're not bilingual or you don't have a second language, you will never be able to enter. So that opens up like, yeah, different opportunities. Also, not even in just not opportunities in Canada. Oh yeah, you also have the option of to work for the federal government, which is very good as well. And also, yeah, if you have plans of going abroad, going out of the country to work or to study, it's very beneficial if you know, at least understand a little bit the second language, right? Not some, of course, if you're going to be working and you're going to be using a second language, it's very beneficial if you're fluent in it. But some people, if you're just like visiting other countries, going on vacations, it's beneficial if you at least learn the basics or know the basics.
All right, that's the end of that. Well done in many parts. Okay. I'm not going to spend much time on listenability. Her speech is very well done with the rhythm, the musicality. Her interjections aren't problematic. The only tiny thing the raters commented on, once again, is a slightly simple sentence structure, but it's a minor thing compared to the other strengths. So again, you notice probably she relies a lot on these so, and, also, right? That sort of thing. So those could be a little bit higher level, but overall really strong speech delivery and her pace. Really nicely done. She does support the position. Okay, now she reads it again right off the test screen. Try not to do that. So at least we know the position, and that's a good thing, but find your own words to express it. That's what I could recommend for your vocab score. But this woman does say it's beneficial for high school students to be required to learn a second language. She then comes up with some very interesting but creative reasons to express why. I think of all the reasons we've seen in today's webinar, these ones for me stand out as the most unique and the most abstract and high level for the content area. So she uses herself as an example. So she talks about living in Canada and learning French. So again, that's the narrative or the framework of her entire answer, rather than just list random reasons, right? So she does say, first of all, you'll get more money, but she doesn't just say it like that. That would be plain and simple. She says, you will have more compensation if you're bilingual. Look at that vocabulary. Isn't that fantastic? Compensation's a fancy word for money or salary, and bilingual means you speak 2 languages. And she even becomes more precise, French bilingual. She says that's the first thing for me. So she's clearly using her own experience living in Canada. She's speaking to us in English, so clearly French would be her second language. So I love this creative approach. So compensation is the first reason. Whole new field of work. What a wonderful natural expression. This just means you'll have more opportunities to find jobs or employment if you are bilingual. All right. And then she gives a good example of that. Remember how she said in Canada, that's where she lives? She then furthers that and says, basically, here's her example. You could even work for the federal government in Canada if you knew English and French, which is true. Yeah, French and English are the 2 national or official languages in Canada. So if you actually wanted to work for the federal government in Ottawa, you absolutely have to speak fluent, completely fluent in both languages. So you don't have to bring your knowledge of Canada's history and politics into your answers. But if you've got that knowledge, why not? It answers the question beautifully. She doesn't just say, oh, you'll have more opportunities for work. That would be probably more like level 8. She's furthering that. For example, if you speak English and French in Canada, you could work for the federal government. Not everybody would think to go that far, and I'm really glad she did. The last part of her answer, though, falls a bit short. I love the expression. She talks about going abroad, and she even specifies to work or study. But some of you noticed here in the chat box that she repeats that darn word beneficial a million times. I'm exaggerating, but I think there's at least 4 or 5 times all together. She keeps just saying it's beneficial. if you know the second language. It's beneficial if you're fluent. It's beneficial if you learn the basics. So again, a good natural expression, but we've repeated this too much. What we should be doing is giving an example of how it's beneficial going abroad to learn that second language. Can somebody here give us one practical application? So I don't know how many languages you all speak, but imagine going to a new country on vacation and you actually do know enough of the locals' language that you can communicate. What would you use that language to do specifically? Think of all the things or tasks that you would need to accomplish while traveling. What makes sense to you? Think of the last vacation you took. Hopefully it wasn't that long ago. What are some of the fun activities you could do if only you could speak the locals' language? Aha, Vishwa, thank you. You can bargain with taxi drivers over the fare. Fantastic, specific example. You can ask the locals for directions if you get lost. You can, oh, sorry, Madonna, I stole your idea. Yeah, ask for directions. I'm terrible with directions. That's why for me, that's important. Simon said the same thing. What about ordering food in a restaurant? You can read the menu and order the meal and actually get what you ordered, right? So you don't have to list 3 or 4 examples. You won't have time for that. But I think giving 1 or even 2 specifics there would have definitely elevated the response even more. It's pretty good altogether, though. Pretty good altogether. So really quickly here, let's guess her score. Definitely higher than the beginner level. She gives lots of good examples. She falls short a bit. She repeats her language. She's got simple sentence structure. But boy, is her speech ever fluent and bouncy, and the rhythm's great. And see, again, it's a balancing act. We find strengths, we find weaknesses. Then we have to figure out which ones outweigh the others. And you're all correct. This woman earned a level 9. Yeah, it's really strong response. A little more development to go, but level 9 it is. Okay, so for task 7, this is where you have to be quick. Whatever question you get, you're going to answer yes or no to. So this woman had to say really quickly, yes, all high school students need to learn a second language. So once you've figured that part out, you've only got the 30 seconds to think of your reasons. And I would encourage you to try to think of 3 because you've got 90 seconds to fill, and that's what's going to help you get to the end of the time. Okay, so speaking of end of time, I've got 1 minute to 4. Oh, it's 4 p.m. on the nose now, my time. So I apologize, we're going to go a little bit late, but I have one more little task to share with you. We'll try to do this in about 5 minutes, so we'll finish just a bit over time. So here's your last question on the CELPIP speaking, and it's the last question of the whole CELPIP test. That's the good news. It's another picture question, so I hope you have fun with it. Here's this question. It says, you are at a tourist site and you see some street performers. So that's the picture right below. Here's what you have to do for task 8. There's usually 3 steps, so just make sure you're doing them all. The first thing we're told to do is call our friend Katya. So when you start this role play, you're actually going to say, hi, Katya. You have to pretend you're actually phoning her. If there's no name in the question, please make one up. But it says use Katya's name, so that's what we'll do. Hi, Katya. Then we have to describe in detail what these performers are doing. So this is a lot like you're speaking task 3. Remember when we went around that supermarket picture and we talked about what everybody was doing? You're going to use those same skill sets, but now you're describing this picture. So what's happening right now? Describe to Katya what these 2 musicians or performers are doing. And then the third and final thing is we have to make sure we invite her. It says, ask her if she would like to see the event. So to have a full and complete answer under task fulfillment, you have to do all 3 of those things very well. So again, I'll play this final response for you as we're looking at the picture so you can assess how clearly the man is describing the picture. Here we go.
Start speaking now.
Hey Katya, so I'm standing outside the Caplano suspension bridge. I'm really excited to see it. But right outside there's these 2 street performers who are really amazing. One of them is a bucket drummer, so he's taken all these kind of household implements and containers and he's using them as drums, and he's doing a really great job. And in this musical arrangement he's being accompanied by another guy who has wine glasses with different levels of water, because you know how the trick where a glass filled with a different level of water creates a different note. So he has all these glasses in front of him, and he's also playing beautiful music. and he's accompanying the bucket drummer. So together they're creating this amazing rhythm, and I think you should definitely come see it if you'd like to see it, because they're going to be, I think they're going to be playing for.
All right, he got cut off at the end, but again, it was obvious he was winding down. So this is an instance where that wouldn't affect his score. So really quickly, here's his transcript. I'm going to start off by saying that even though his rhythm was very steady and fluent, you know, there weren't any major pauses or interjections, his intonation was lacking. So this is one of the only responses you've heard today where the voice was a little bit flat, almost in a monotone. So if you're listening to my voice right now, you'll notice that it rises and falls quite naturally. And when we use intonation properly, as I'm doing now, it adds a lot of much needed energy to the voice. And as soon as you take the intonation away, I'll demonstrate right now. So imagine if I delivered this 2-hour webinar and I sort of spoke in a monotone like I'm doing now. Can you imagine listening to that for 2 hours? You would be bored and you would daydream and you would probably log off the call. So adding intonation helps the listener stay engaged, but it also helps the listener understand where ideas begin and end. So this man's intonation, oddly enough, because frankly, I think he's one of the only, I'm guessing English is his first language based on what I just heard. So, but he performed the worst under intonation than any of the other people on this in the session. So it's interesting, right? We all have strengths and weaknesses. So more intonation from this man, please, is what we would need. But that's just one weakness. He did everything else quite well. Sentence structure and all that is quite complex too, so I won't spend time on that with you. Have a look at his content as well. His content is very detailed. You know, he does give an overview of the scene. He calls Katya. He explains where he is. It's at the Capilano Suspension Bridge, so that's very precise as well. And when he talks about the street performers, he puts so much attention into the types of instruments that they're both playing, and he uses words like implements and musical arrangement, accompanied, bucket drummer, amazing rhythm, and so on. So he's got quite a bit of strong vocab. I noticed that he repeated himself a wee bit though. He used this expression a few too many times for my taste. I noticed he said really amazing. He used that word really a couple or 3 times, I noticed here and there. So it would have been nice for him to, you know, just try to use something different or take that word out altogether. But again, it's a minor thing. Does complete the task, finishes in mostly the 60 seconds and so on. Are you ready to guess the score for this one? Last one of the day. The wise test taker will say, Brandy told us that all of the responses would fall within these levels, and there's only one score that we haven't yet seen today. So through process of elimination, you could play the game that way. Or you could really focus on the language skills and say, what did he earn? Which you probably should be doing. Yeah, this one is, believe it or not, this one is a level 12. Level 12. So it's not perfect. And I love showing level 12 responses that have little tiny mistakes, like lack of intonation, repeating the word really a few times, etc. Level 12 doesn't mean perfect. It just means that you've demonstrated enough strengths, high level strengths across all 4 areas. So the details will be more complex. Oftentimes there's more abstract thinking involved. Like this man is talking about household implements used to make the bucket drum and all that sort of wonderful vocabulary. So well done, mister. Yeah. And task 8, as I say, it's the very last question of your whole test. It will be a role play, so please make sure you're setting it up and following all the instructions. We had 3 things to do in this question. This man did it quite well. And I guess the more description, the more descriptive language you can use to paint the picture in the listener's mind, the better your score will be. All right. So I'm going to end it there. I'm not going to go through the study materials today because we are out of time. And this webinar is by far the longest one we do because we have 8 different tasks to get through. So thank you so much for sticking through. I know it's quite tiring to get to the end. So I'm just going to stop sharing my screen and I'm going to return back to Sarush because he will have a few words to say about
Thank you. Thank you very much, Randy.
My pleasure.
Great as always, impressive as always. Very good. Thank you very much. I'm pretty sure that like all the participants have learned a lot. And okay, so for those of you who joined us late, right at the beginning of this webinar, I introduced myself and I talked about ILIA English Academy. So let me reiterate. My name is Surush Hazani, and I'm the owner and founder of ILIA English Academy. We are an online language school headquartered in Vancouver, specializing in IELTS, ESL, CELPIP, French, and Spanish instruction, with a rich history spanning over 28 years. We've been consistently offering courses to students worldwide. Our team of instructors can be found not only in Vancouver, but also in Calgary, Toronto, Montreal, and even as far as Costa Rica. We offer lots of different courses: General English, Power English, IELTS, CELPIP, KL, free discussion, English grammar clinic, that's the title of our course, essay writing, French and Spanish. If you would like to follow us on social media, here, let me share some of our links here with you. Okay. Okay, so this is our Instagram. And also this is our page on Telegram about CELPIP. And if you would like to watch the recorded videos of the previous webinars, so we have put them all on, except for the listening, the reading, which one was that? The listening, I think. And you can find them all here. And okay. And if you would also like to Google us and see, okay, here. And yes, okay. So don't forget, at the end of, I mean, the participants in this webinar will receive free study materials from Prometric and also one free session from ILIA English Academy. So if you would like to receive that free session from us, you will receive an email from Prometric with a code, but I'm gonna actually share our Instagram link again. You can also DM us here, and we will be in contact with you regarding our free session. Our free session will be held next Wednesday, 4:30 to 6 p.m. Vancouver time. So if you're interested, DM us on Instagram, and we'll be in contact with you. So time to say goodbye. This is the end of these 4 joint webinar sessions with Prometric on the CELPIP exam. Regretfully, we need to say goodbye to each other. Yeah, okay, and I would like to thank each and every one of you for our active participation and engagement throughout all these sessions. I also want to express my appreciation to the team at Prometric, Brandy, Patrick, and the others behind the scene for collaborating with us on these sessions. Their expertise and support have been really instrumental in making these webinars a success. But my suggestion to all of you is, to the participants, not to Brandy and Patrick, continue practicing, keep learning, believe in your ability to achieve your goals. Remember that success is the result of dedication and hard work. I wish you all the best in your upcoming CELPIP exams. And thank you once again for being a part of ILIA English Academy's webinar series. And I look forward to seeing you in our next events in the future. Stay motivated, stay focused. And I'm pretty sure that you can always, you can call us for any language needs that you may have. And I'm pretty sure that you will get your desired score in your CELPIP tests. And yeah, that's all for me. Patrick.
Awesome. Yeah. I was just telling people in the chat that we're going to send an email to everyone tomorrow with the free CELPIP study product, Sarush's contact information with that free code to get the free prep class, as well as the recording, which you can watch and download. So look out for an email tomorrow. It's also going to have our contact information. And Rama said, "Oh, this is the famous Patrick." Not that famous, but hopefully one day.
You're so popular, Patrick. Like everybody likes
I saw that too, and I wondered, what did you
Brandy
do?
and Patrick, you are awesome. Right.
I hope to be famous one day, but I appreciate that you think that. Perfect. Yeah. Thanks, Nadia. Thank you, Cyril. Yeah, so basically, if you celebrate, happy Thanksgiving to everybody this weekend.
Yep.
And
Happy Thanksgiving.
yeah, just spend time with your family, think about what you're thankful for, and best of luck with your journey. We're here for you. And yeah, I think that's it. I think I covered everything.
Yeah.
We will be doing more webinars with Sarush in the future, so it's not like we're never going to do another one. We're just going to take a little break. We'll probably do another one maybe January in the new year. So just check our Instagram channel. Brandy's also running webinars routinely as well. And yeah, have a great weekend, everybody.
Sorry, Cyril has asked a question. Seemingly, she cannot, he or she, I don't know, sorry, cannot open the free reading and webinar test. There was no tests. I mean, there are recorded videos of the previous webinars on YouTube.
It might be the Accelerate product. You mean the free product?
Oh, I see.
I'm only guessing, because that's a reading and writing product.
Right.
So occasionally can I just add to that? Sometimes when we issue the promotional code, when we do these joint sessions, if they're just an in-house sale going on for all Prometric products and all CELPIP products, the promotional code doesn't work while the sale is on. That happened in the last session I did with another department. So that could have been why you couldn't open them then. If that's the case, then yes, please email customer service. I mean, Patrick is here now. He's not really customer service, but he knows all about it. So it's just a matter of reissuing you a code sometimes if that's the case, if there's been a glitch. That might have been the issue. I'm just speaking from past experience. That could have been one reason why. But anyway, Patrick's offered up this email. Yeah.
Because of if we have a sale on, then the discount codes won't work for that week.
Right,
yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So you can try the same code again and it will likely work.
Yeah.
If not, you're going to have our contact information so you can get in touch with us tomorrow and then we'll resolve it for you.
Right. Yeah. And again, remember that Monday, Canada, most people in Canada do not work on Monday. It's a holiday. So if you do have an issue with the code, please get a hold of us tomorrow, or you'll have to wait till next week on Tuesday or later on. That's all. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Should come through tomorrow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And a special good luck. I saw some people are writing their test today even. So wow, like coming to a session and then taking a test, it shows a lot of commitment. So very special good luck to those of you writing today or soon. I hope it goes well. Let us know. I never hear back. I want the success stories. I want to know how it goes. So if you do have a moment to drop us a line on one of our social media channels or email, like it's always nice to hear how it went for you. So good luck. Hope you learned some things today that will help.
Definitely. All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of the week. Thanks,
you.
Sarush. Thanks, Brandy.
Thank you. Bye. Take care.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Take care.